I'm Betty Swann, and welcome to our show, Wisdom in the Night, where you get the help you need for those tough decisions in your life. Tonight I have a great guest. He is a celebrity tennis coach, an international model, and a business owner. So welcome to the show, Thomas Grassberger.
Thank you, Betty. It's a pleasure to be here.
Oh, I'm so excited. I just want to hear
Thanks.
about your life. I know you must have lived a very interesting life. So kind of tell me your background.
Okay, it has been quite a journey, that's true. I'm almost 40 years now. This year I'm going to turn 40, and I feel like I've really lived already. So that's a good thing to say, right?
Yes,
and
it is.
I'm not even like a third in my life here, right?
Right.
So, but I'm from Austria. You know, I grew up there in the Austrian
Yeah, you
Alps.
sound like Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Thank you. It's a compliment
Yeah,
for me. You know,
yeah.
it was always a big inspiration.
Oh,
in my
he was
life.
for you in your life?
Yes.
In what way?
Well, we're coming from a small place in Austria, a very small town, you know, and he did as well, you know, and he was one of these Austrians that left Austria and made it very big. And that was always my intention when I left Austria as a teenager. I was 19 when I left.
Mm-hmm.
And I was always inspired by him, you know. He was an inspiration for me to go out there in the world and succeed.
People don't realize, Thomas, how they can do that to others. They have a dream. You've got a dream. You're
Yes.
following your dream, doing very well at it. You're inspiring others, and you probably don't even know that they're watching you.
Yeah, it's a dream. Like you said, it's a dream, but you don't really know where your dream. You create something long time ago, and then you think it goes one way, but then it always goes another way. You know, you have to be very adaptable. You know,
Mm-hmm.
things move and things change, and you just have to continue to move forward and you know and stay positive and stay encouraged and motivated.
Now, were your parents real supportive of you leaving the country at 19?
It was not something that was really exciting for them. You know, my father was a banker. He wanted me to stay in Austria. I'm sure, you know, go this route of safety and security. You know, and
How about your mom?
my mom was more on our side. You know, she was always sort of in between. You know, there was the grandmother was also in the house. You know, the mother of my father, and she was a teacher. You know, always very strict education, and it was a little tough. You know, because I never wanted to stay there. I never wanted to be like that, you know. I just thought I wanted to change and I wanted to leave, and somehow
How were
America.
you when you first felt that way?
America was always interesting for me. It was always like a magnet that drew me, you know, towards. I was maybe 14, 15 when I realized that the American English was something that I was really drawn to. You know, I would hear people speak American English, and it would be like, wow, I really want to hear this. You know, even that we learned the British
British
English, right? Yeah,
right.
but I was drawn to the American English. You know, so it was always there already as a kid.
Did you
know.
ever speak the British English? Not really?
You learn a little bit in school, but
Right.
not like
No,
something
but drawn
that,
to the American.
Yeah, it was always
So
American.
did you come to America when you were 19?
Yeah, I went to Florida. I was part of a hotel management group. I was working at a resort in Naples, Florida.
How'd you get that job?
It was something through food and beverage, through seasons that I worked in, you know, in Austria, in the summer season, winter season, you know, bar, hotel, lake, ski resort. You know, I gained experience in this area. Besides going through a sales and marketing management education for 3 years, I always had the food and beverage on the side too, you know. So, and then one day I applied through a company in Europe, and they sent me to Florida, and it was the first time 18 months trip for me, you know, because as a tourist you can come 3 months, but then as with this visa I was able to go for 18 months, you know. My brother was also there, so we both left, you know. My brother was already there earlier. And we ended up meeting in Florida again, and we both worked at this resort for a good year and a half, you know.
Now, is your brother older or younger?
No, he's younger. He's 2 years younger. He lives in California now. He's also married.
Yeah, and so you worked in Florida doing this food and beverage
Yeah,
and
it was
all
a
of that.
hotel.
How long did you do that?
Well, the whole program was about 3 years. But within these 3 years, I started modeling as well, you know.
Now, how did that come about?
Well,
I mean, you obviously had the build for it.
Thank you. A friend of mine in Vienna, Austria, took photographs of me at the time. And when I ended up in Florida, I had an agency that approached me there in Naples, and I showed them my pictures, and they liked it. And then from there, I got another agency in Tampa. I got another one in Miami. And then within a year and a half, I was very busy going within these places. And I built a resume.
Runway? Were you doing runway or
I
print?
did that as well. I did print, I did commercials, I was part of films. I did a whole bunch of things within a year and a half,
What'd you like the best?
I think all of it was very exciting at the time. I think it was all a great experience, even the runway. Here in New York, I'm a little short, so I'm not doing much runway now.
Yeah,
but
I've done runway. I've been a model.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I've been a model,
Nice.
and I've done runway, and I'm very short.
Yeah.
But what happened in my life was I got interested and involved in modeling when I was 40.
Wow. Nice.
Which normally they're 16 years old, and you think,
Right.
well, you can't do that. But if you have a dream,
Yeah.
the dream will happen if you hang on long enough and have
That's
passion
true.
about it.
That's
And
true.
I became the age that they wanted classic models. They wanted older models.
Very good.
So I did a lot of modeling, runway, and what was called tea room then. But print work, I know what you're saying. I love it.
When you meet somebody like Michael, there was so much energy exchange that it was just amazing. Every time I talked about it, it would give me goosebumps, because it was just so intense, But
There's something about certain people. They have a charisma. They have a
very
power.
strong.
They have something, don't
very
they?
strong, yeah. And it was another important part in my life because I had to break free from Austria. I had to, fight for my life. I had to believe there was always coming negativity towards me.
Now, how did you deal with that?
Well, difficult, because most overall, when negativity comes from the closest people around you, including family members,
It's hard.
discouraging you, saying who's gonna wait for you, this and that, negativity that's supposed to bring you down. We had to fight through this, and I say we
Have you ever
because
read
my
that
brother
Bible verse that said, many times your enemies will be the members of your own family?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, and that's what you're
Absolutely, yeah.
talking about.
It's very interesting because these are the people that are, I think, the closest to you, right? But they also have a big influence in your life, right?
Yes, and when that negativity is there, it's harder.
Yeah. Yeah,
It's
and
almost harder than outside negativity.
it's a huge test because you have to forgive them, you have to live through it, and you're still giving them love and attention and everything that is good, and Christ-like, and even that they made it more difficult for you, not really.
But have you
easy.
noticed, though, that when you go through that responding the right way, like what you're just talking about, actually you grow out of it no matter what their response is, whether they never change.
Yeah.
If you respond correctly, have you noticed after that you're stronger than you ever were?
Absolutely, yeah, no doubt about it.
I mean,
It's-
instead of, you could cuss them out, you could yell and scream at them, you could be mean to them.
Right.
That doesn't do anything but tear you down.
Yeah,
And in that great pressure situation,
yeah.
if you respond correctly, you make yourself respond correctly, you grow.
Yeah, it's also a learning process, no? Because when I was young and this negativity came at me, I didn't know how to react properly to it. This is something that I learned over the years myself. Where I taught myself how to believe or how to act or react. This was a changing of the
so
mind.
for
already.
somebody that's watching you right now, what would you say to somebody who's listening and going, I'm going through that kind of negativity, tell me exactly what I need to do? What would you say?
Every time when negativity comes, either it comes to you or you are putting it out. Those are two different things. No, like when I saw or when I heard myself, my inner voice talking to myself, anything negative, I would have a time in my life where I realized this and say, this was negative, and I have to transform this into a positive thought. So the change from negative thinking to positive thinking was a very big transformation in my life. And that was actually, even before I got really introduced to the Bible and to Christ and Christ's walk, I already had this transformation in my mind. And to eliminate negativity, there was times in my life where I didn't read the newspaper, where I didn't watch the news on TV.
Because of the negativity in it.
All this negativity in it, so I just really cleansed myself from all this, and that was a process that took years.
How many years?
Well, I would say at least 3.
But I agree with that. No,
Yeah.
I think what people don't realize
Yeah.
is
It doesn't go
it doesn't go
from
fast.
one day to the next.
No, it doesn't. You have to
No.
almost like retrain
Yeah, it's
yourself.
a reprogramming your
Right,
mind
right.
and your mind process.
Right. Well, now, how did you get into being a tennis coach, a celebrity tennis coach? What is that all about?
Yeah, I was very young when I started with tennis in Austria, and it was a very big passion of mine. And I really wanted to continue with a sports gymnasium. It just didn't work out in Austria at that moment. And besides, I left. And when I came to this country, I had a long break of tennis. There was at least good 10, 12 years, almost 15 years I never played, because the passion was very strong. It was a very, very strong reality, tennis in my life, as playing tournaments and really wanting
I
to
did this. I
be
hate to keep
professional.
saying I've
you
done
know.
the same thing,
Yeah.
but I was a real serious tennis
Yeah,
player, and then
it
I
was
went
very
15 years
serious
away
and-
from it.
And so I had this break, but then in Hawaii, my wife one day said that God spoke to her, and she could hear a voice saying that, you know, you have to tell your husband he has to get back to tennis. And when my wife said that to me, I have to get back to tennis, I didn't really understand what she meant, right? Because for me, it was playing, was professional on a professional level. So for me, teaching was not really something that I was interested in. You know? But then one thing leads to the next, you know, and I just had major things happened. Like, you know, I picked this business card. I think I told you this story once already of this pile of business cards, and it was exactly the guy that, you know, that certifies you from the professional tennis registry, you know, out of like
Now, wait, I
hundreds
don't
of
remember
cards.
that story, because you picked his business card?
Well, it was like a wheel, you know, where you put in all these business cards,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah,
and
like a
there's like
Rolodex.
200-300 business cards there, and I just spin this thing and pick one, and here it is, the one guy that certifies
That was the
people in
Holy
Hawaii.
Spirit guiding you to that.
So after I got these kind of signs, I was like, okay, I called the man, and I already I knew the man already, and ended up that he has once a year a certification on the Big Island, and it was the week after all this happened. He put me in,
Right away.
and it was like
right away
within 3-4 days I had my certification, you know.
to teach.
And then immediately I got signed with these great resorts on the island, you know. I started teaching there for a couple of years. And when we transferred to New York in 2009, I got signed with the best clubs here in the city, you know, and really started teaching on a full-time scale here in Manhattan.
Yeah.
And over the years, I was just able to really pick the best clients, you know, and now
And you mean you can pick your own clients?
well,
you do that?
I'm to the point where I have an amount of clients that I maximize my outlets here in Manhattan. You know?
Right. Do you see any of those players really improve because of your working with them?
Yeah, it's beyond tennis again. You know, tennis is a tool that helps me meet people. You know, but it's not just about hitting a ball over the net, or it becomes a relationship with each person that I play with. And it goes beyond tennis, you know. It's about body language. It's about the mind again, you know, how people think. That shows exactly how they react or how they act on the court, you know. So I can
Tennis is a
see
lot
it's
inner.
amazing.
It's a lot of inner
tennis and
stuff.
life go hand in hand.
Yes,
you
they
know?
do.
It's like
And you-
so amazing.
And
so
you
it's-
really have to watch that word talk in your head
it's
while
a
you're playing in a
perfect-
match.
It's really a perfect gift from God, you know.
Yeah. Well, now, how did you get a close relationship with God?
Well, it was already when I lived in Florida and I was involved with the industry, like I said to you, in Miami mostly. It was a very clear thing for me that the industry is an industry that likes to party, that likes to be out late, all the things that come with it. And my personality was sort of drawn to it, you know. So I knew that if I would continue with this, it's a path that's not a righteous path for me, and a path that I cannot continue. And then things again led from one thing to the next, and I ended up on the Big Island in Hawaii. I changed my life after Florida 3 years, almost 4 years actually, and I ended up on the Big Island.
What changed your life in Hawaii?
Well, it was also a very interesting story where I like to write everything down. You know, I have books of all my journeys and all my places and all the things that I did, my thoughts. I write everything down, you know. And when I was ready in Florida to say, okay, I'll leave Naples to move to Miami, I had it all written down. A couple of days later, you know, I met my friends there. They had a place in north of Gainesville, and you know, and I went there to visit them, and this lady, they had a little boy there, you know, and her son, and then ended up. This boy was pointing at this picture, you know. He was like maybe 3, I don't know, at the time, and he said, Ocean, Hawaii, you know. And I didn't really think much, and then I was back down in Naples a few days later, and I wake up at night, and it was like Ocean, Hawaii. I just couldn't get it out of my head anymore, and within days, I was on the Big Island.
That is amazing.
Completely changed everything.
A child delivered the message to you.
Yeah.
It was God speaking to you
it was
through the child, and then you couldn't get away from it.
But then again, you know, if you don't act, things don't move, right? So you got to make sure that when these messages come, you know, that it's either you go for it or you don't. You know, a lot of people I think it takes a lot to actually make that step forward, you know. I could have gone already a long time or many times into a comfort zone in my life, you know, where I had work, I had, you know, a car, I had maybe a girlfriend, I had a nice apartment, I had things, you know. But I always want to move forward, you know. It has to get better.
And that can feel empty too. Having the girlfriend, the apartment, the great this, the great that, there can still be an emptiness in it. Did you ever feel that?
Well, it's all about the spiritual change that happened, right? Mm-hmm. So that was going back to when my life changed in Florida to the Big Island. And then I was already wanting to change. That was a very important part. I didn't know how things would happen, right?
Yeah, well, did your wife have a big part in that?
I didn't know her at the time. I met her 4 years later. So when I ended up on the Big Island, I had a job there that one day this couple walked inside this booth. I was selling activities on the Big Island. And we talked about Greece, and you know, I'd like to go to Greece. I've been there many times. And he said, yes, we were teaching the Word of God in Greece for 3 years or something, him and his wife. I said, really? That's very interesting. And then it ended up that I talked to this gentleman, Charles Ricks, for about, I don't know, 15 minutes. He ended up inviting me for a Bible study, you know. And they were hosting a Bible study at their apartment on the Big Island. And Charles said to me, why don't you come to the Bible study? You know, I invite you. And I ended up going. I was the only person there the first day. There was nobody else showed up. I was
so
the only one at the Bible
So you could get special attention.
Study. And it ended up that this couple stayed our teachers for many years, you know.
And had a big influence on your life for many years?
Very big influence. And then when I ended up meeting Chris, my wife, you know, I met her on my birthday, you know.
How'd you meet her?
Well, it was through the modeling agency, you know. I was signed there with an agency too, Focus International, you know. They're a big international agency out in the Hawaiian Islands. And Chris is a designer, right? So she came from New York, ended up on the Big Island. A friend of mine that I did a movie with, he was also with a Brazilian girl at the time. He missed her because she was in Brazil or something. Ended up meeting Chris. And my friend Michael said, I want to speak Portuguese with you a little bit, da da da. My friend has a birthday party, you want to come? And it ended up being my birthday party, you know.
And so Chris, who's Brazilian.
She ended up coming to my birthday party. We met on my birthday.
Yeah.
And we ended up staying together ever since. Yeah.
That is beautiful.
Had a great first encounter. And then the second encounter, I brought her to the Bible study.
So she wasn't a believer?
Well, she was. She already had a longer background of belief and of faith and of a journey with Christ.
But she actually went with you to that Bible study.
And she came with me to the Bible study.
And then those people had a big influence on your life.
Absolutely.
So I guess what I'd like to ask you about is, do you believe that even though you need something besides church, you need like a Bible study or something to have a group where you can discuss, do you feel like the leadership of it is really important? Who is actually speaking into your life?
Yeah, I think at the beginning when you are wanting to change your life or when you want to get closer to God or to the righteous path, I think a Bible study is very essential. You have to be part of a Bible study. You have to you need somebody that explains the Bible to you, because when you are out, you can read it on your own, and you can probably understand some things. But I believe that a teacher can really put it much better in perspective, and that really.
So really,
helps.
it's kind of like going to college, except you're going to the
Yeah.
Bible.
Yeah, you're learning something new, you know, and it.
You have
and
professors.
It's you have a teacher, you know, you have somebody that knows more than you do, you know. It's a great way of humbling yourself, and wanting to learn, you know. And then with time, it becomes a walk, you know, and then you realize you have to renew your mind, and you have to really work on it. You have to continuously work on it. You know?
All right. Now, I want to ask you another thing. Now, you're a businessman too, so obviously you take your faith into the business world too, right? What do you do in business?
Well, my wife is an artist, you know.
That's this shirt right here.
Yeah,
Did she design this?
Yeah, this is her
Chris Beretta?
one of her latest.
A man can listen. I like it.
One
I
of her
like
latest
it.
ideas, you know. It's a male shirt too now, you know.
Wow.
But we do. We have a fashion and art company, you know.
Oh, okay.
And we're expanding now to Brazil, but also to Europe, you know, to Austria, to Germany. We just came back from Brazil. We were there for a good 2.5 months. In the winter here in New York, it's summer there, so it's a very good time to go there. We also produce everything there, you know, and expand, you know, in the places.
Well, what kind of challenges have you gone through just in the recent years? Because I think people tend to think, oh my gosh, he doesn't know me where I've been. He's been famous, he's been a model, he's been a tennis pro, he's had nothing but success. But that's not how life really is. So what kind of challenges have you gone through that required you to really change? Now, I'm not talking about back when you were in Florida and you went to Hawaii. Since you've been here in New York, what kind of challenges have you encountered?
To be honest with you, I'm very blessed, you know, with my life here in New York. It's been a blessing really from beginning on, you know, from my point of view, because I was able to work right away, I was able to make money, I was able to network, I was able to meet very influential people, you know. But on the other hand, I'm also investing and supporting my wife and as an artist.
Well, that would be the challenge.
And that's the challenge.
Right.
That's where the challenge
is
comes
really
in.
not for you.
Exactly.
But helping her get that business going.
Correct.
Right.
That's the big point in my life where I'm investing into somebody, believing into somebody to really succeed, and helping and supporting it. I'm also the financial director of the company. I'm the investor of the company, you know. So I put a lot of money out, which also means a lot of faith, you know, because money doesn't come back right away. It's very challenging, the fashion and the art business.
Now, see, that's what I want people to hear.
Yeah, it's extremely difficult. It's extremely a lot of work. It's so much work that you don't see. I see it because I see my wife on the computer for hours and doing things and creating things, and there's so much work and so much effort that goes out with very little reward. You know, so I can see that a lot of people or a lot of businesses go out in the first couple of years, 3 years, because it's just so challenging. So for me, from my point of view, I see that we're moving forward. Not only here in New York, but also in Brazil. We expand now to Europe. You know, we're starting to move forward, even that the money is not really here yet. But it's the faith, it's the belief that God has a plan for our life. He put us together on a certain day. You know, everything was exactly the way how it's supposed to be. So I believe that it's going to continue like that.
And you hang in there.
And I hang in there, you know.
Yeah. So if somebody's listening to you and they're right there in their life right now, that same challenge of I've got the dream, I've got the idea, I've got the gifting, I've got the ability, but the struggle is making it the success in New York City and now other places.
Yeah.
So what kind of advice would you give somebody watching this show that says, man, tell me what I need to do? What would you say?
Well, turn to Jesus.
Really?
Turn to Jesus, man. Because I feel like that if you're trying to do it on your own, it's going to be very difficult. But with with Jesus' help, with the faith of Jesus having an influence, or the belief that Jesus has an influence in your life, and that God has His hand on you and say, hey, you're going to keep moving and you're going to keep moving forward. You have to keep going, and you have to focus maybe more on the spiritual side of life rather
Well,
than
do you go to church?
Well, I go to Every Nation East Side, right, here in Manhattan, but we also like to go to a church in Brazil, it's Maranatha. Maranatha means Jesus come. And so it's a very nice evangelic church in Brazil that I really enjoy.
But you go to church?
Yeah, we always
a
go.
lot of Christians say, I'm just not interested in organized church. But what's the reason for it for you? Why do you like organized church?
Well, it's a community, and
Okay.
and it's very good to have like-minded faith believers, together in especially in a big city like New York, where we have everybody here, But I think it's very important to have people that are like-minded, and to share and to encourage one another. I think this is really it really helps.
Well, there's a verse in Hebrews that says, "Don't forsake assembling yourselves together."
Yeah.
Don't be like a lot of people that do that. Don't do that, because you need each other. You need that.
Well, it's yes, and I'm very glad that I have my wife, because she's also a strong believer, and I always encourage a relationship. I encourage a marriage, because it's something that becomes a teamwork, and
Wow.
when it's together, with Christ, man and wife together with Christ is very strong.
Well, folks, this has been a very interesting conversation. You have seen a man who has done a lot of things and been very successful at them. And yet, he's been very honest that in his latest thing, he has challenges that he didn't have before, and he's got them now. So I hope that encourages you. Thank you so much for tuning in tonight. It wasn't an accident that you turned on the TV tonight. It's not. And I hope you receive some wisdom from this man, and that you have a great rest of the night, whether you're going to sleep or you're going to work. I'll see you next time. Bye. Hello, I'm Betty Swann, the woman who interviews people on the show. I want to tell you about something we're doing that you might want to be a part of. Feeding people with pennies and small change you find. The exchange rate makes them valuable. I saved $3.22, told my friends on social media, and they shared it. $215,000 has come in, 100% goes for food. We've fed people in 21 countries. Come help us.